Well, hello everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Friday night, the 17th of May, 2019. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee weather show. And I had to go get myself a cup of coffee. I don't know, I've been getting sort of waves of sleepiness this afternoon and evening, trying to avoid falling asleep before my shift is over. We have a pretty busy weather map. Scott Briller pointed out to me earlier, and as did a few others, I believe it was Scott, or maybe it was Chuck, or perhaps both, that nowhere in the United States do we have drought conditions. It's really kind of amazing to see something like that, because usually you do have one area that might be excessively wet compared to another area that's excessively dry, but we seem to be in this rotational process where everybody's participating in some sort of wet weather at some stage. The only thing is I wish we would get a long enough break here in the East to get some dry conditions in here so we could put together maybe 3 or 4 days of some nice weather, at least in my neck of the woods. That doesn't seem to be coming anytime soon. Interruptions with rain, however, will be minor as we go through the next 4 or 5 days, at least into next Wednesday. So that's that's at least a plus. The day sides, for the most part, are going to be dry. We have a lot of severe weather tonight going on through parts of the plains. We have another extensive day of severe weather probably coming up for tomorrow. And, of course, out in the west with this fire hose jet in the Pacific, just unrelenting and sending weather systems in one after another, the upper air, and to some extent the what's going on at the surface, resembling conditions in late March, early April, with big snows in the Sierra Nevadas. You're getting a lot of rain in California. There's another system getting ready to come inland. I guess it's all part of the very strange spring that we seem to be having. I usually try to put that in perspective, in that most springs wind up feeling strange because we forget, and that often involves long stretches in the Northeast and in the northern mid-Atlantic states of onshore flow, northeast wind, low clouds, drizzle, fog, and rain, and days with temperatures not getting out of the 40s. It's just that, once those kind of weather days are so miserable, you just want to forget about them. And then come next spring, when they happen again, everyone's going to complain about it, and I'm going to remind everybody that, well, it's like this almost every spring. So let's get started tonight. We have a few other things happening too. We mentioned yesterday about a system in the tropics, so we're going to down in the Bahamas to Bermuda. And the Hurricane Center actually mentions that today. But let's start front and center. I'm going to bring up the U.S. satellite here. Okay, so you can get a full sense of what's going on with the activity out in the west, a ton of clouds. You can actually pick out where the thunderstorms are developing across parts of Texas and Oklahoma, and particularly further north, a big blow up there of storms occurring up through eastern Colorado and into western Nebraska. The clouds, those bright white clouds, really firing up rather significantly. And also, by the way, we're seeing a firing up of some thunderstorms across West Virginia and Kentucky. That is with the cold front that is moving through the east. And we have those clouds, we pointed them out yesterday, running from the Florida Straits across the Bahamas, running east-northeast out to Bermuda, out and beyond. And it's from this we may wind up seeing a little low form sometime early next week. I don't expect it to amount to too much, but the Hurricane Center does acknowledge it. And again, I'll get to that in just a little bit. So let's start off. Let's take a look at what the severe weather risk that is going on tonight, and it's pretty substantial here. You've got the SPC yesterday had a big area of slight risk with these two areas of enhanced risk. They kind of left the enhanced risk alone, and then they fine-tuned the forecast to splitting the slight risk areas in two. And it's the northern one that seems to be more active at the moment. We've got 1 working tornado watch and 2 working severe thunderstorm watches in that area. We have another severe thunderstorm watch that's up in southwest Texas in the area that's further south. And in the storms that are in Kentucky and West Virginia, where we have slight risk from southeast Ohio across West Virginia and through much of the state of Virginia, we have a severe thunderstorm watch working in that area. And those storms are sliding east-southeast. So they're crossing West Virginia, and they're probably going to be moving into the state of Virginia in short order. The surface map tonight shows the frontal system that's in the east getting ready to move on through. And we've seen a few showers and downpours that moved across New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, Long Island, Connecticut today, into southeastern New England. We are warm sector to some degree. And now here comes the cold front that is going to be moving on through very soon. And behind it, as we look up to the north, we are seeing it's not a big area of dry air, but it's just enough. We've got high pressure from Canada going all the way up into northern Canada. This high extends from there southward down into the western lakes. There's a sliver of dry air relative. We'll call it a sliver. It's not a large area of dry air, but at least that is going to be moving in to a good chunk of the northeast tomorrow, making for a very nice Saturday, and we're happy about that. This cold front's going to push far enough south and east and weaken to some degree. And then as we move out into the plains, of course, we've got a rather wrapped up low there in eastern Colorado. Temperatures in the 80s, pushing all the way up into Nebraska with dew points in the 60s. I'm just noticing a 71 dew point. I'm not sure what station that is, but we've got dew points in the mid to upper 60s all the way up through southern Nebraska. You've got the cooler air up on the other side, of course, streaming across the plains and on up through parts of through the Dakotas and in through Montana. We have a small area of winter weather advisories up for parts of eastern Montana and western North Dakota. I pulled up some of the obs from up there. Most of that area, you're seeing reports of mixed precip and temperatures that are, in general, above freezing. And then out as you go to the west, of course, with this deep upper trough in the west, you've got some rather cool temperatures throughout much of Nevada and Utah and down into Arizona and in through a bunch of California, where the temperatures during the early part of the afternoon only in the 60s all the way down to San Diego. So you got this really, really cold pool and this strong jet coming in from the Pacific. It's creating some cool conditions at the surface, and you have very cold, unstable conditions aloft with the upper air. Rather active scenario. So here's what the radar looks like. And of course, as I always remind everyone, if you're watching this on a replay, it's the radar shot here. I'll update it right now so we can get the latest view. But our radar shot here it's 7:40 Eastern time. So be sure to go to your local National Weather Service office to check out the latest information regarding severe weather, and you can access that by going to weather.gov. But busy across northeastern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming. You see some of these stronger cells that are moving northward through Nebraska, coming out of Kansas and about to enter into parts of South Dakota. Some of those are likely to be severe. In that southern end, down in Texas, where we have that other severe thunderstorm watch up, the area of thunderstorm development there is just beginning to blossom out a bit. Got some scattered cells down in the southeast in Alabama, Georgia, and North Florida. Nothing too unusual. Some rain down in southernmost Florida out to the Florida Keys. And here's your east-west line of storms running across West Virginia and back over into along the Kentucky-Ohio state line, and where the three states meet. Some big cells there running southeastward. The eastern part of that area looks a bit less impressive than the area out further to the west, where you see the darker reds. And in the northeast, of course, you've got the cold front coming through. We've got 2 clusters of downpours. The stuff that you see off of southern New England, that moved through in the afternoon. This second batch coming through now, and this will be soon offshore And of course, right behind it, if you just look at where the edge of these downpours are, that's pretty much where the cold front is. And from there, north and west, the drier air that's going to be coming in for later tonight and for tomorrow. And out in the west, you've got precip across Idaho, Nevada, Utah, western Colorado, and parts of Wyoming. Not a whole lot of activity going on in California at the moment. Just most of it is light and scattered around. And we've got some other scattered precip starting to come in from the Pacific Northwest. Just back to SPC for a moment. We have 1, 2, 3, the 4 severe thunderstorm watches that are up as of 7:42 Eastern time. So here's the watch number 171. That's in effect until 8 p.m. Mountain Time. This is a severe thunderstorm watch, northeastern Colorado, southeast Wyoming, southwest Nebraska. Tornado watch number 172. This is up until 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time for parts of northwest Kansas. I believe that's just one county in eastern Colorado, and the rest of them line up through the state of Nebraska. Severe Thunderstorm Watch 174 is until 11 o'clock Eastern Time. That's the one that covers northeastern Kentucky, southeastern Ohio, a very small portion of southeastern Indiana, and into West Virginia. And Severe Thunderstorm Watch 175, this is for South Dakota and northern Nebraska outside of the tornado watch area. And let me just, those are, I guess that's what's left here. I thought there was that one other box down in Texas, but let me just make sure. 175. Do I get them all? Well, I have all the ones that they have up here, and here's they just put out a new a convective outlook from late today, and this is what it looked like on that map. So you can actually access all of this pretty easily if you go to spc.noaa.gov and click Mesoscale Analysis. This is what it looks like on the surface as of 7 o'clock. And the radars are from just a few moments ago, 7:35. And you can see where all the cells are relative to the surface plots and where the lows. You got a low center back here in Wyoming, another low center down in eastern Colorado, pushing northeastward. And, of course, you've got the higher pressures up to the north extending from the lakes. As we showed you, that high goes all the way up into northern Canada. The satellite, I just want to come back to the northeast just to show you just show you what's going on here. But we've got the showers from earlier have moved out, of course. We managed to actually get a bit of a break. And now if you notice over parts of central New Jersey back into southeastern PA, you're getting that little last blow up of some storms. And then further to the west, you can really see the blow up of the thunderstorms that are occurring in through Kentucky and in across West Virginia. The GO 16 is really great because you really can see those cloud tops on some of these storms. That's pretty impressive development that we're seeing going on with the area in the east there in the Appalachians. And on the radar, from the perspective of the Northeast, you can't really pick up that easternmost edge there into West Virginia. Johnny Quest, looks like you might get into some of that as it moves east-southeastward if it holds together. And maybe it looks like also a few of the cells in that eastern flank, in the eastern part of that line, seem to be firing up on the last few frames. So let's see what happens when they cross the mountains. But they have time to hold together, at least for a little while, as they push on to the east. Okay, so as far as weather is concerned over the next few days, let's take you to the upper air and see what's happening. We, of course, have been dealing with a combination of a block up over Greenland and a deep trough out in the west, and a northwest flow that's kind of set up here in the northeast, at least for the weekend, to keep things reasonable. And you can see it here. The flow is a bit split coming out of Canada down across Superior and through New York State and New England. So you're getting this northwest flow, which is a bit more favorable. And the depth of the system out in the west, that's pretty strong there. That upper low sitting north of Salt Lake very strong shortwave that's going to be moving eastward and tracking well to the west. It lifts up into the northern plains here on Sunday. So that puts a ridge here in the east, and that's why I'm thinking, at least for the weekend, no real problems until maybe Sunday night, as a warm front goes through and we get into some showers and storms. And in the meantime, take a look out in the west on the edge of on the left side. Here comes another big upper low crashing into California on Sunday and moving eastward into Nevada and Utah. So the west continues to see these systems just screaming in from the Pacific. And here's a third one that moves in on Tuesday. So while all this continues, this is going to set off more severe rounds of severe weather for the plains in the next 5 to 7 days. You might get a bit of a break as that first shortwave lifts out, and you see it here lifting out on Sunday. You get a bit of a break. Then the next one starts to come in for Tuesday and for Wednesday of next week, and that upper low is going to rotate. They rotate around each other. One lifts up toward Minnesota. The other one's going to drop back down into California. And in the meantime, look at the big ridge that builds in the east out of all of this. That at least is promising in the sense that I think it's going to keep things. We're still going to be in a pattern that's relatively reasonable and not get involved in any serious onshore flow scenario until that ridge weakens. It pops up fairly strongly there in the southeast. And of course, in the mid-Atlantic, particularly from the mid-Atlantic and then down into the southeastern states, it's going to get quite warm to hot during next week, and the weather is going to be actually quite nice. Big upper highs sitting over South Carolina and Georgia by the end of next week, which then gradually gets flattened out. Another trough drives down into the southwest, and also you're getting some action in the east by the end of next week, going into Memorial Day weekend. Now, bear this in mind of the holiday weekends for the summertime. What we consider the summer holiday weekends, the Memorial Day holiday weekend, which is really not in the summer, it's in the spring, but it's kind of like the unofficial kickoff of the summer vacation season. That Independence Day, which is not really a holiday weekend because July 4th is July 4th, but everybody figures out a way to make it a long stretch of days off, and the Labor Day holiday weekend. Of those three, this is the one, the Memorial Day holiday weekend is the one that's usually the most problematic and the least likely that you would go all 3 days without losing at least one of those days. So I would count on losing at least one of those days in that 3-day weekend stretch from past experience. I really am having a hard time figuring out when was the last time we had a Memorial Day holiday weekend where all 3 days were spectacular. It just really doesn't happen very often. So in the east, your front goes through. We've got just enough of a piece of that high to build in. The storm in the Rockies tracks well to the west, which buys us some time. I think we're fine on Saturday and for the daytime on Sunday. Sunday night into Monday morning, we get into the super warm air. Look at the isobars, by the way. You can see how they go from south to southwest to almost westerly here on Monday. So one of the things I would point out, the GFS might be a little bit overdone with what it's showing with precip there in New York State and Pennsylvania, but particularly in Pennsylvania and over New Jersey. If we wind up seeing some sunshine on Monday with that west wind, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see somebody getting close to the 90-degree mark in New Jersey or southeastern Pennsylvania. It would not be a shocker. But that's going to hinge on the sun coming out and not having much in the way of cloud cover. If we wind up with some sunshine, we certainly should be able to push temperatures into the 80s in most locations, even along the coast. That goes through, and then we've got drier air coming in for Tuesday and holding on for at least part of Wednesday. Maybe it'll hold on for all of Wednesday before we get into the next weather system shooting in. And meanwhile, out in the west, of course, we talked about the fact that you've got this next upper low coming in. Here it is on Saturday and later Saturday night into Sunday. Still showing snows for the Sierra Nevadas. They have another round of winter storm watches up for 1 to 2 feet in some places, believe it or not. That low translates into the Rockies. Some elevations are going to be able to get snow out of this. Here comes, as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, where we're thinking another round of severe weather for the plains, with a developing low running northward up into Kansas. The GFS, with its upper low the way it is rather impressive here with this low that it forms down in Texas and then lifts northward up and through West Kansas and into western Nebraska. So we'll see if this winds up verifying, but if you have the dynamics of this upper feature like this, if this winds up being correct, and given the way what's going on with the jet stream, it wouldn't be a shocker. But when you have something like this, where the shortwave this strong cuts off and lifts northward like that, you've got really powerful dynamics at play. I would not at all be surprised if this winds up being a rather extensive outbreak of severe weather in the plains. Perhaps starting as early as Monday. There might be some on Monday and particularly Tuesday. And also extending maybe a little further east as we get into Wednesday. So we're gonna keep an eye on that. The wider view shows the dilemma, by the way, of the whole jet stream pattern, the way it's set up right now. But there's that fire hose. Okay, look at this. This is from yesterday, where we had the upper low coming into California, another one in the Gulf of Alaska, another one south of the Aleutians, and here we are today. You still have what is pretty much a straight line, a straight belt of winds across the Pacific. And here we are now for the weekend. The one that comes into California is out into the plains. The next powerhouse coming into California, you still have this powerhouse jet into early next week. It starts to break down a bit in the longer range. Suddenly you've got a ridge popping up along 130, I believe that's 120, 140 west, on up northward through the Gulf of Alaska. And notice, by the way, just to get you, when the atmosphere is doing this, deep trough, you have to wind up with strong ridges on either side, which is what you have. You have a ridge at 140, you have a ridge at 80. Okay, along the East Coast and then up into the Gulf of Alaska, the trough in the middle. You have higher pressures across Greenland and a low near Newfoundland here, okay? But its influence only goes back to about Maine. It's not strong enough to suppress that ridge in the east, nor is the upper low that's up in northern Hudson's Bay. So there's, I would guess I would describe it as you'd have, everything has moved to a point where there is room to squeeze a ridge in the middle of the two upper lows that are in play, the one in Newfoundland and the one up in northern Canada. Even though you do have a bit of a negative NAO here, you've got a blocky look up near Greenland and up toward Labrador. That actually hangs in there through much of the next 10 days. Gradually, what happens is the jet drops further south. As we move toward Memorial Day, you suddenly get rid of that ridge as it flattens out and you replace it with troughing just off the East Coast. The hope is that you can wind up with something that keeps things dry more often than not, but that remains to be seen. And by the way, also notice how, take a look at this, when you get to this time of year, as the last vestiges of the winter season are getting wrung out of the atmosphere, you get these cutoffs that form, and there's one, a rather vigorous looking one that tries to drop down off the southeast coast of the United States in the long range. That may or may not happen, but my point is that this is what you typically see at this point of the spring, as the last sign, the last of the winter weather, the last of the quote cold gets dispersed throughout the northern hemisphere, and it gets sent down further south. It mixes with the warmer air, and then ultimately, once it's all gone, the summer season can really start to take hold. You get a wholesale retreat of the jet stream on up into Canada, and then here comes the hot weather and the humidity that usually goes with it. So everything to me looks pretty much on course with regards to what's happening seasonally. I wouldn't read too much into the unusual nature of the depth of the trough in the west or the long periods of onshore flow that we've been dealing with as any sort of sign that this is going to be, it's going to extend into the summer or well into the summer. I don't know that is the case. You can flip this all on a dime. That's why I just kind of try to stay inside that 2-week time frame. All right, so as far as the tropics are concerned, this is the area here across the Atlantic from the Florida Straits, but really more from the Bahamas to Bermuda and extending northeastward. It looks like it's part of an old frontal boundary, and sometimes under certain conditions you could wind up with a tropical system that develops out of it. If this were in much deeper into the tropic, if we were into at least late June or July, or certainly if we were in August or September, that would be an area of interest. And if you go to nhc.noaa.gov and go to the 5-day outlook page, the Hurricane Center did issue a special statement here, a special tropical weather outlook, calling for no development in the next 48 hours, but a 30% chance that we could see it develop into something over the next 5 days. I think you're going to see low pressure form out of this. The models have been showing that for the last few days. We can give you a view of the Atlantic and take a look at what it's doing. And it's not doing much with it. And by the way, the last few runs have gotten rid of that hurricane in the Caribbean. If you remember what I said yesterday, you're going to start seeing this more and more in the coming weeks. But all the models show is if you look east of the Bahamas, see that little low? Literally, it's like a tiny little, it's a little low that forms there. That's what the Hurricane Center is talking about. And here we are, like Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, and it gets picked up by the frontal system that's to its northeast anyway. So even if it were to develop into a tropical depression, it wouldn't, or subtropical depression, it wouldn't last very long at all, as it'll get absorbed by the strong frontal system that's going to be up to the north of it. So I think that kind of covers everything with regards to our weather going into this weekend. It's hard to believe we're at Memorial Day. Didn't we just have Christmas? Seriously, it's like I've lost the concept of time. My God, everybody's so great tonight. Thank you, all of you, for hitting Super Chat. I really appreciate this. Ruthless Goat, Paul Roman, Johnny Quest, William Uber, Chuck Cardillo. You didn't have to do it, guys. Thank you so much, though. I really appreciate it. That's a couple of cigars for me. It's actually that might be 2 cigars and a beer. Thank you very much. You're most kind, all of you. Just coming back on the chat board. Okay, I see you guys are talking about the Preakness tomorrow. I don't expect anything to happen with regards to showers for the Preakness, by the way. I think it's going to wind up being a fast track. Nitrovert, looks like you're under a slight risk in southeastern Minnesota for tomorrow. I think you are correct. I didn't put up the SPC map for tomorrow. Let me just refresh my memory, because I know they have an enhanced risk out there. They do have slight risk into southeastern Minnesota, with the low going pretty far to the left. If you get warm sectored all the way up, and I don't see why you shouldn't get warm sectored, I think you got a shot for some you probably have a shot for some severe cells forming. The enhanced risk area for tomorrow, just let me put it up on the screen. Here we go. So there you go. The slight risk, this is for tomorrow. So we've got enhanced risk, northeast Texas, western Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma. Big area of slight risk from Texas on northward all the way up into southern Minnesota. I'm going to go back. I just want to pull up I just want to take a look at something here. Let's see. Just want to just get a feel for what the jet looks like. You've got a fairly 700 millibar jet. Actually, is not that unimpressive. Coming up through Iowa, weakens a bit. There you go. So this is for Saturday night into Sunday morning into southeastern Minnesota. I listen, not impossible. I think there's going to be a bit. I think tomorrow's going to be a busy severe weather day. Where's that other one here? I'll take a look at this. So you got these, I mean, you got really some pretty strong jet streaks at the 10,000 foot level, running up into southeastern Minnesota through much of Iowa. So I think certainly the risk area there is justified. You are going to probably wind up with some thunderstorm activity out of this. The 3 kilometer NAM. Take a look at the 3 kilometer. Well, there's your low. Okay, running up Sunday morning up into northeastern Iowa. I mean, the NAM, the 3 kilometer NAM would has a warm sector much further to the east of you, but that's the 3 kilometers view. It still brings in some pretty strong stuff coming in as the warm front lifts by, and there's your line that crosses from Oklahoma through Arkansas and in through Missouri. The 3 kilometer NAM showing, in its way, is pretty impressive. By the way, if it's only that I know of that it's on the 3 kilometer. If you go to precip and moisture and click radar and satellite, you can see the model's actual simulation of what it thinks the satellite and the radar combined would look like. This is actually quite cool to look at. But here it is, and it's only on that 3 kilometer NAM. And of course, if you follow it here in the east, the clouds get out of the way. We've got a nice day on Saturday. I'm thinking Sunday, by the way, no worse than a mix of sun and clouds. But there's your squall line of thunderstorms for Saturday night in that area of that big area of slight and enhanced risk. And then as we move into Sunday, there's much less in terms of development. And you can also, by the way, if you look on the lower, I don't know if you can see on the lower right, the NAM does kind of pick up on that system out between the Bahamas and Bermuda. You can just barely see it there in the corner, but it does actually show the clouds you can actually see there's an upper low sitting northeast of the Bahamas, okay? And then you've got clouds that are rotating up around it. So perhaps somewhere to the east of that upper low, you're probably going to get some sort of surface low that'll try to develop during the early part of next week. Before too long, we'll probably, eventually are going to have some tropical storm and hurricane activity to look at. By the way, on the East Pacific side, they do mention an area south of Mexico might see some gradual development sometime during next week. The Hurricane Center mentions that for the Pacific side on the Pacific Tropical Weather Outlook, which they are now issuing 4 times a day because their season has already begun. Coming back to Scott Briller, May 19th, 1962, the temperature hit 99 in Central Park, the highest May temperature ever. And I don't know if you were around when I told this story, but I think I did it with Joe Rayo, but there is a story behind that. The actual high that day was 101, but the forecaster and the observer got into a huge row, and the forecaster insisted that he put 99, because apparently he was only forecasting a high of 70 that day, and as they kept having to raise the numbers, when it broke 100, he was embarrassed enough that it got to 99, but I guess 100 was too much, and so it actually got to 101, even though the official high only reads 99. And that was a story that was told to me by a forecaster many, many years ago who was around at the time. So he's long since passed away. But a really, really a smart man and a good forecaster. I won't mention his name, but I remember him telling. He had a great way of telling stories about the old days at the Weather Service, and that was one that always stuck with me. David Schwartz, that's sad news to hear that a filly died at Pimlico, pulled up before the finish and collapsed after crossing the finish line. That's a very, very sad thing to hear, especially in lieu of the fact of what went on in Santa Anita this winter with the multiple breakdowns of horses. Multiple. They had, I think it was something like on the order of 24, 25 horses that broke down over a span of a number of weeks, and they had to reduce the meet to 3 days a week, and they couldn't figure out why it was happening, although it was probably a combination of bad track conditions and all the rain that they had in California this year. But that's really sad to hear. Mammoth Mountain in the Sierras is up to 698 inches for the season, but that is far from the seasonal snowfall of 1,225 inches at Mount Rainier in a national park in Washington. I don't even know how to, I can't even comprehend that number and just exactly how much snow that really is. I mean, that's just insane. All right, folks, it's coming up on 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Once again, thank you, Ruthless Goat, Paul Roman, Johnny Quest, Bill Uber, and Chuck Cardillo, all of you for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really, really appreciate it. My buddy Phil Buzz, his daughter Danielle, and her fiance Brian, they're getting married tomorrow. And I know that they were hoping that they would get an absolutely gorgeous day. It will be a nice day. There's no rain in the forecast. And I'm invited to the wedding, so there better not be. Otherwise, I wind up taking hits while I'm there. Chuck Cardillo, yes, Gordon Barnes from News Radio 88, WCBS, New York. 4 tones will follow. The fourth and loudest one marks the exact time. I think Joe Rayo and I are the only two that remember that, but I do remember Gordon Barnes, and I remember in my very young days looking forward to his forecasts every morning and every afternoon, especially in the wintertime when I began to grasp just how much I enjoyed watching snow coming down, or the potential for snow. Sadly, though, those winters in the 70s, except for 77 and 78, and to a lesser extent 78, 79, were just not good winters for big snow events. But they made up for it in a nice way during the last 18 years. Not so much this past winter, of course, but in all the winters since 2000. I've had more than my share, so I'm not complaining. Thanks, Ruthless Goat. Very kind of you to say, by the way. I really appreciate that. I just try my best and just tell you what's out there. And yeah, that is 100 feet. That is insane. The amount of snow. Okay, so live streams this weekend. Tomorrow, I'm at a wedding tomorrow, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to do one. If I don't get to do one, definitely on Sunday. So I may have to skip one more day. But thanks very much for being here. Still, by the way, I still do not have my Facebook issue resolved where I'm able to go live. But Joe Rayo is off tonight, so and then we're here together on Monday, and then he's going to be out on Tuesday. So I think what I may wind up doing is that if my situation on Facebook is not resolved by early next week, I'm going to probably move the show to YouTube, and we'll just do it here. Okay, we'll see what happens. Off and on rain now, says Patricia Owens in Pennsylvania, but on Sunday you're supposed to have thunderstorms, so I know your dog Chewy is going to be freaking out. That would be later in the day, by the way, Patricia. It won't be from the get-go. I think you'll start off okay, but during the middle and late afternoon, I think you're going to see downpours and thunderstorms bubbling up in Pennsylvania. I don't think they're going to move into New Jersey or southern New England or the Hudson Valley or Long Island until sometime after, say, 7 or 8 o'clock. At least that is the plan at the moment. Are the storms a mesoscale complex? They actually do look. Let me look one real quick, Johnny. One second. Let me take another look at the radar. When you look at the way the radar, the thunderstorms are structured, I'll bring it up front and center, and take a look here. I mean, it almost looks like these cells, that there might even be a little, because of their way they lined up east-west, it almost looks like they may start training a bit. That does have a look to it of a mesoscale complex. I mean, you see how they're all getting clustered up there. I'm not sure what highways these are that are crossing, but that east-west line, the way it's coming down, someone's going to get hammered for a long period of time because of that angle of approach and that snaking look of the line itself. I'm going to just really fast see if they got any working warnings. No, they still have the watch up there. They do have, actually, there is a tornado warning. There's one severe thunderstorm warning. This is out of the Weather Service office in Huntington. You got one working flash flood warning near Clarksburg. You've got a working tornado warning northwest of Snowshoe, and a working severe thunderstorm warning southwest of Charleston, southeast of Huntington. And this is, by the way, as of 8:15 Eastern Time Friday night. So if you're watching this during the overnight hours, or if you're watching this tomorrow morning, bear that in mind. You're looking at Friday night stuff, weather.gov for the latest regarding what's going on currently with respect to severe weather or any kind of weather, so you can get the latest watches and warnings for your particular area. So let me just bring this back. Hang on. Okay. Thanks again for everybody for being here. Have a great weekend. If you're not with me during the weekend, we'll see you at some point either tomorrow or Sunday. Good night, everybody.